If you're looking at starting a care agency, or you've already been running a care agency and you're looking at supported living, there's a huge notion, a consistent notion and conception that supported living is one of the most lucrative models you can deliver, which isn't wrong. Because, for example, you are basically housing, or the definition in simple forms is you are providing or enabling the service user to be able to live independently in their home. So in many cases, as a care agency, you're providing the accommodation. You don't have to. I mean, in some cases, there's a private landlord, sometimes a local authority provides it, or there's already a social housing provider. But for the purpose of argument's sake, you can provide the accommodation. You don't have to own it. You can also lease it from a landlord. But you're providing the accommodation to the service user and also giving them that care and support they need within that accommodation too. So you're basically doing the whole management of the care, support and the accommodation and the housing. Now, that is obviously different from domiciliary care, where you're providing 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour care on a daily basis, or maybe 2-3 hours a day. Because with supported living, you can provide up to 24 hours, literally 24 hours care and support in that home, as opposed to domiciliary care that stop and start, going back and forth. So there's a clear difference there, not only financially, logistically, the travel time is less, the expenses is less, staff prefer that, so your staff retention is a lot better. So there's a lot of reasons why supported living, it's a good strategy for a lot of agencies. However, there's also a misconception and a common mistake that a lot of agencies are making when going for supported living tenders. That mistake is just simply not understanding how and where their income is going to come from. So when I say their income, with supported living, like I've explained, yes, you're providing the accommodation and the care. However, the income is only going to come, or is mainly going to come, from the care and support, not from the accommodation. What do I mean by that? The council are only paying you for the number of hours of care you're giving to the service user. Yes, the service user, bear in mind, they are their own tenants. So they are your tenant in this example because you're the one who manages or you own the accommodation. However, the council are not paying you the rent. You are going to have to claim the rent back from Universal Credit, and that rent is going to be literally local housing rate, which is peanuts. You're not going to even break even if you have a 4-bedroom house with 4 people. You're going to be left with more expenses, consistently taking losses. However, what helps to overcome that is the number of hours of care and support you are delivering, not the accommodation. The reason I'm saying that is because a lot of agencies and business owners start off by going into a long lease with a landlord to get accommodation, with the purpose of obviously using that accommodation to bid on a tender or bid on a contract so they can start growing their business with that model. You've done that, you've gone into a long lease, you're paying God knows how much the landlord's charging you, and peradventure you eventually win a tender after you're still paying this lease, by the way, month to month, and the tender probably takes 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to even come out with a result. Assuming you've even won the tender, right? You've won the tender, you've got the contract, and now you've got a service user and you've accepted a service user or package that only has 5 hours of support or care, and you're still at a loss. Then you get another one because you're just desperate to get all the packages, and you get another one that's, again, maybe even 10 hours. This is weekly, by the way, 10 hours per week, and you're still at a loss because you've only selected, or you didn't have the understanding that you're only going to get paid for the number of hours of care and support you're delivering, not from the rent, or not that you're only going to get paid, but the margin or the income will only make sense from the number of hours of care and support. So once you have that understanding that, look, forget about the rent, focus on the number of hours of care and support. It might be a framework or a contract that has various different packages. Some packages may require 10 hours per week. Some may require 24 hours per day, every day. It's always based on the needs of the individual, the service user. So don't go accepting or working with, any packages if it doesn't make sense for your business. Have that understanding and you'll be fine. Make sure you plan accordingly when you're bidding on a contract and bidding on tender, with the understanding that, look, I'm going to get this number of rooms in this location, and this is the number of hours at a minimum you can work with. Segueing into that, the second thing you need to understand if you're planning on growing your business with a supported living through a supported living model is the pricing. Now, typically with supported living, it's typically funded, service users are funded directly by the government. So it's not private funded. So it's typically always going to be the government who cover the cost of the service users' care. So you need to understand With that in mind, there's going to be a pricing arrangement that the council are going to have to pay you. What do I mean by that? So if you're bidding on a tender or contracts, typically they're going to have a pricing ceiling. That might be a pricing ceiling for the number of care and supports hourly rates. That might be from, let's say, £18 per hour to £21 or £22 per hour. They'll give you that range in the tender, and they'll ask you to give them your best rates that you're willing to accept, basically. What a lot of agencies do, and a lot of business owners who are just starting out, or maybe even experienced providers have been established for 10, 20 years, but they've been doing domiciliary care. What they do with the understanding that, okay, I'm going to get the rent, I'm going to get paid the care as well. What tends to happen is you'll end up underpricing yourself just so you can portray that you're, more economically valuable agency to work with, because you're going to save the council money, so you're going to go really cheap. Problem now with that is, as and when or if you do win that contract and that tender, it's two things. Number one, you've ended up undervaluing your services and lowering your margin, because again, with the understanding that the rent is going to be absolutely peanut, basically non-existent. So the way you're going to cover your cost is going to be from the care and support. Now, if you've devalued the hourly rates, and in so doing, even irrespective of how many hours they even give you, but because it's so low, you're probably always going to be left at loss. You're always having the expenses. Bear in mind, you've got to pay the rent if you're leasing it, pay your insurances, your staff, your systems, everything. So by going cheap, a lot of providers still end up at a loss. We've got agencies that basically refuse to work on a contract because it just simply doesn't make any financial sense, because they went too cheap the first time of bidding or going for that contract. So you have an understanding that when you're going for the price or putting your price forward, don't go cheap, because you'll end up regretting it. So make sure you actually work out the expenses first, because even on top of that, trying to get that price uplifted is going to be an uphill task. In some cases, with some councils, it's basically a miracle. Even though the tender or the contract might take 5-6 months to even come out with a result. At that point of view, given that pricing, maybe the national living wage was less, and you're putting that case to them, sometimes they just turn a blind eye and deaf ears to it. So you're probably going to be pretty much stuck on that price for a year or 2 years. So make sure you do those two things. Understand, first of all, the income or the margin is from the number of hours of care and support. As well as that, do not go too cheap. Work out the expenses and give a rate that is suitable for yourself and your agency. Make sure you're liking and subscribing. I'm going to share more guidance and more tips of how to win contracts and tenders, especially if you're a care agency.